Now we get to pick up that idea of ethical critique as a choice between different ways of being a hero in a more theoretical way, with the work of Gregory Nagy in his book Best of the Achaeans, Concepts of the Hero in Archaic Greek Poetry. And full disclosure, Gregory Nagy is my old teacher from my undergraduate days and someone with whom I've worked closely, and a man whose work I admire greatly. In any case, his book, Best of the Achaeans, as you can tell, talks a lot about Aristeia. Remember, Aristeia, literally bestness. Now, Nagy translates Aristeia as prestige, and you can see how that goes along with excellence. It's just a slightly different way of focusing. But what I'm going to be talking about comes from the first chapter of Best of the Achaeans, which is something, if you're in the Gaining Homer course, you read a little while ago. The assignment for Gaining Homer for this module is chapters 2 and 3, which build on what we find here, as I'll talk about in chapter 1. If you're in the Living Epic course, obviously you're not required to read this, but again, just like Lord's book, Best of the Achaeans comes very highly recommended by me, and I encourage you to check it out at the library, if you will, or by buying a copy. In any case, what Nagy is talking about in chapter 1 of Best of the Achaeans is a moment in book 8 of the Odyssey. Now you may remember that all the way back from our first module. The reason I had you read Odyssey 8 and 9 then was that it was our best input, our best way in to the bardic occasion, because we see the famous Demodocus, the bard of the Phaeacians, counterposed to what we see of Phemius, the bard of Ithaca, Odysseus' hometown. Demodocus lives in this kind of semi-magical land of Styria with the Phaeacians, and it's with him that Odysseus gets to strike his very special bargain, where Odysseus asks Demodocus to sing about how Odysseus was the man responsible for the fall of Troy. And Demodocus responds, and then Odysseus uses the opportunity to weep copiously, so that the king of the Phaeacians, Alcinous, will ask him who he is, and Odysseus will get the chance to tell his own story. And that's the story that we have in Odyssey 11, when Odysseus is talking to Achilles about what it means to be dead. And Achilles tells Odysseus that actually he'd rather he weren't dead, that is, Achilles weren't dead. What we see in Book 8 of the Odyssey with the first song of Demodocus is a very strange moment in all of Homer, a kind of story about Odysseus and Achilles that we don't have any reference to otherwise, but was perhaps in the background of the Odyssey. It's a moment when there is, in fact, a quarrel, according to the song as we hear it reported, as Demodocus sang it to the Phaeacians and Odysseus, when Odysseus and Achilles are at odds, and Agamemnon is happy because he sees that the best of the Achaeans, and this is where the title of Nagy's book comes from, the best of the Achaeans are quarreling, and this makes Agamemnon happy. Now obviously that says something interesting about Agamemnon, which intersects with what we were talking about in Iliad 1, the counterposition of Agamemnon and Achilles, but more importantly, it's something that says a lot about the ethical critique that one can do of Achilles and Odysseus. And more than that, it seems to be saying that the bard is, in a certain sense, in charge of that ethical critique. Here's what Nagy says about it. My suspicion is that the oracle was not misunderstood in its prophecy of a quarrel between Achilles and Odysseus specifically. There's a strange thing about an oracle that makes Agamemnon happy because he thinks that if Odysseus and Achilles will have a quarrel, that means Troy will fall. The reference to Achilles and Odysseus as the best of the Achaeans at 8, line 78 may have served to reveal that the poetic repertory of Demodocus is in control of two distinct themes that permeate the Iliad and the Odyssey, themes that define the central hero of each epic. That is, Demodocus, in singing this song, is showing that he controls both the Achilles is great ethical critique theme, that is, choose Achilles, and the Odysseus is great ethical theme, that is, choose Odysseus. Or, to put it in very broad thematic terms, the contrast between strength and cunning. strength, the special power of Achilles, and cunning, the special power of Odysseus. So what Naj is telling us in chapter 1 and then goes on in chapter 2 and 3 to elaborate on is that the bards were capable of a kind of ethical critique that came precisely out of their interaction with the traditions of epic that are part of the material that they control and which they can recompose over and over and over again to produce different sorts of ethical critique. The question is going to be whether that's something we can do today, whether there's a kind of interactive function of ethical critique that we can point to also in our own culture, and in particular for our purposes, in video games.